Sometimes 3 is not the perfect number. That is the length of the losing streak Ohio State is trying to snap on Saturday in the game against rival Michigan. But it's Thanksgiving. There are 3 things that we can talk about on the podcast daily. So thanks for joining us. That's Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Happy holidays, happy holiday season, happy rivalry week, and happy Thanksgiving. Berm, how will you celebrate?
Well, first, I want to say that I'm thankful for everyone who gets up and watches our stuff daily and makes sure that we are a part of their life. It means everything to us, and we appreciate it. Other than that, just going to celebrate it with family and football and trying to get some much-needed rest ahead of this weekend and next week's signing period. So, nothing crazy.
What is your favorite part of a Thanksgiving dinner?
I am hardcore a turkey guy, as you know. Like, I love turkey. I think it's the funnest.
Every day is Thanksgiving for you.
I could, so like tacos, pizza, and turkey I could eat quite literally at any meal, and I would be thrilled to have that. But mashed potatoes are also, like, I heard your wife on a work call on Tuesday while I was at your home doing work, and she was lamenting the fact that she hates mashed potatoes while she was talking in a work meeting. And I thought to myself, that is the biggest red flag I've ever heard. And I can't believe you guys have made it this far in your relationship, knowing what I now know.
Some things you just have to look past. It is her only flaw. So
wild.
I know it's a tough one to take, but you know what? I'll just scoop them right off her plate and put them on mine. Mashed potatoes and gravy, the highlight of any Thanksgiving.
I think Thanksgiving dinner is perfect if you have turkey, mashed potatoes, and just rolls. I don't need anything else. Anything else, like, I will eat other stuff, but like, it to be a complete and sufficient Thanksgiving meal, it's just those 3 things that are necessary.
That's true. 3 things. That's perfect, Berm. How about 3 things about the game and Ohio State? Thing number 1. I was gonna say what your current mood is, the thing that you can't stop thinking about. But I think your mood will probably be conveyed in every single thing that we talk about. What is the single most important thing about the game?
Winning it. At the risk of sounding pretty basic. No, I think it's funny, and maybe this is just a byproduct of Ohio State's success over the last 20 years. Maybe it's because Ohio State fans in general have become somewhat spoiled and entitled. Maybe it's because we say it all the time, no matter who Ohio State plays, it's that team's like biggest game of the year. It's their Super Bowl. It's blah, blah, blah. Like, this game still matters more than anything to Ohio State. And it is hard to always spell it out the right way, because we've already talked about it on the Wednesday stock report, or maybe it was Tuesday snap judgments, or like, Ohio State can lose this game and they're still in the playoff and they can still win a national championship. And you could lose on Saturday and have an absolutely epic run to win a national championship, and it would not feel complete without winning this game. And this game is Ohio State's, Super Bowl still. And I think that maybe the last 3 years are what the program needed to be reminded of that. But the fans have certainly never lost that. I'm not sure why anyone inside of the building may have lost like the laser focus on it. And I don't know that like there's an individual that has. I think it's just, as a program, the goals have changed and the college football landscape has changed. And so you start to think about things other than one game, and you think about the national title and all that stuff. But Ohio State's only won 3 national championships in the last 45 years. So beating Michigan is still the most important thing. And like, without it, no matter what else happens this season or any other season, is not going to feel good. Imagine how obnoxious Michigan fans are going to be if they were to beat Ohio State on Saturday and Ohio State still won the national championship. Whoa. Imagine how obnoxious that would be.
I'd rather not. I don't want to do that. So along those lines, have you felt like Ryan Day has always been trying to beat Michigan? And I think the last couple of years have been complicated by the Connor Stallions of it all. I'd like to remove that as much as possible from the conversation and the evaluation. But the way he's talked in the last week and a half, the conversation feels very different to me. Like I struggle to say that he has a new appreciation or understanding for the importance of the game because he has always known how important it was. I'm only suggesting that maybe in the list of the three main goals, win the game, win a Big Ten championship, and win a national championship, that perhaps, I don't know, and maybe I'll regret even broaching this speculation, that the ultimate goal for Ryan Day was to win a national championship. And you think back to some of the way that Ohio State has talked about going into the game or after the game in the last couple of years, where they would say, well, this one won't define us. There's an opportunity ahead. They might still get in the playoff. And after you lose, you almost have to take that approach just to maintain your sanity. But I think going into it, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, Ryan Day seems to embrace and get the stakes in a way that maybe he hasn't, at least publicly, in the last several years.
I don't think you're wrong, but I also think that it's probably tied to the fact that there is at least some personal component to it now for him, as opposed to just a professional one, where I think that even Ryan Day, who if he were to not take care of business this weekend and Ohio State were to lose and the program decided to move on from Ryan Day, he's going to make $50-some million and be happy for the rest of his life. But that's not what anyone wants. And certainly not what he wants. He wants to win. He wants to be he's put in so much time and energy and effort into this program and the personal and family investment that he's made in Columbus in the last 8 years. And I think that it probably feels different. And, Tuesday, he said it a few times at the press conference, you don't really know it till you're in it. And I think there's probably a deeper level to that, which is you don't really understand it till you lose it. The last 3 years, there are excuses and there are explanations, but at the heart of it, Michigan was better in 2021 than Ohio State. They were better than Ohio State in 2023. I will never sit here and tell you that they were better than Ohio State in 2022 because they certainly were not. But they were the better team in 2 of the last 3 years, I think. And that's what it is. The 2021 Ohio State team was very, very bad on defense. They were historically bad on defense. 2023, there was a piece or two missing for Ohio State. Obviously, we talked all week about the loss of Lathan Ransom heading into that game and the quarterback play, which was good, but not really enough to elevate Ohio State in key pressure situations. 2022 is an anomaly. If I look back at the last 3 years and I circle, this one is because Connor Stallions, it's 2022. Like that one, I have a tough time getting past that one. The other two, I don't think Ohio State was better than Michigan in those games. So it's not just a matter of Ryan Day needing to understand the game or understand what the game meant. It's like, hey, we have to have a better team. And Ohio State took steps in this offseason to make sure they had a better team. Some of that obviously is retention. Some of that's bringing in players like Will Howard and Caleb Downs and Seth McLaughlin. This year feels a lot more like 2022 to me. And so if you don't handle it this year, even with the outcome not really deciding your championship hopes for the national title, it's going to sting in a way that I don't think people would be able to really get over for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you make this point about me all the time that I did not grow up in Ohio. I did not follow the game when I was living in Wyoming. I didn't live and die with it in a way that you did. And so I think there are a couple of things you said that resonate with me. That's like, you don't know about it until you lose it. And so I had never covered an Ohio State loss until 2021. And you give me grief or don't just like being around me before the game because of what I said for the first 9 versions that I saw. And that made you nervous. And so I think that there's a different level of appreciation for me covering the game now, because I would have been in some ways, very few, similar to Ryan Day coming in from the outside and saying, well, of course, wouldn't you want the national championship? If all you had to do, you say pick one or the other, you want the biggest trophy at the end. And there's a pretty sizable part of me that still feels like that's what ultimately you want at the end of your career. But, now that you have the losing streak, I don't think that would be enough for Ryan Day's legacy. I don't think it is what the program wants. And when you say that it would feel hollow if you did it without beating Michigan, I now think that you're definitely right about that. Like, It's not a situation where you could, even the part where you say play it in week 1, that still sounds crazy to me. Like I'm now at the point where I think it's got to be here. It's got to be, you work all season for it and get the rewards. I know it's going to, at some point, there's going to be a Big Ten rematch, Big Ten championship game rematch, or a college football playoff rematch. And I think that part is going to really suck.
Yeah. I'm still on board with moving it to week 1, but that's something that I don't think I have the authority or power to make happen. But it is ludicrous to me to, number one, we're seeing in the college football playoff rankings and how these things are done. When you lose is still way too important compared to who you lose to. And that's something that I think needs to change. But for Ohio State, Michigan to have to potentially play back-to-back weeks is just something that I think is absolutely insane and idiotic and needs to not be a possibility. But
yeah, so I think I can sense a change. That's my outside take on Ryan Day, and I feel different preparing for it because what you said, like, if they do not win, if they do not end this losing streak on Saturday, we know that they're going to the college football playoff. But it's hard for me to imagine this group of seniors that came back specific to win a set of gold pants and the other hardware after that, but to have never won it, I don't know how they would recover from that emotional setback, to be honest. Like, maybe they could, and maybe they would, but boy, like, to have that one goal and know that you could never do that, forget about what Michigan fans would say. I'm just thinking about in the locker room for somebody like Jack Sawyer or Emeka Buka, like that would just be devastating. And it's hard for me to imagine, like, and I've made this point since Tuesday when Emeka said it, like, how much he's willing to sacrifice and give literal blood to accomplish. Like, they're the better team and they're far more motivated. That seems like it's all trending in their direction.
Yeah. So now you just got to play it.
Okay. Thing number 2, we've teased it. The finalists, many of them have been announced for the individual awards this week. Why? I don't know, but it's a thing that we're both annoyed by. So yes, there will be some gratitude and appreciation for something in the show. But thing number 2 is what you think about individual awards voting.
It's dumb. That's what I think about it. I mean, aside from the timing, it can't be aside from the timing. The timing of this is insane. There are potentially 5 games left in the season for Ohio State. And a lot of teams around college football that are going to try to. Would you give the MVP award in the NFL in week 12? Like, this is stupid. We don't need a college football playoff awards show presented by Home Depot on December 10th that badly.
Sure don't.
We don't need it. Okay. There's plenty of football on. There's bowl games on. People can watch How the Grinch Stole Christmas. People can watch a lot of other stuff. Nobody's watching TV on December 10th anyway. All right. It's like, I bet if you took a map, like a heat map of television watching for 365 days a year, December 10th would be like 3rd or 4th on the bottom of the list. No one's watching it. No one watches that crap. No one cares. To have these votes being tallied days before rivalry weekend, even if you waited another week before the conference championship games, that's fine. To do it before rivalry weekend is insane. Nobody's mailing in ballots anymore. You don't need to have this stuff done in mid-November. Let's just stop, take a deep breath, and let's say, hey, December 31st is when all voting needs to be done, and then the awards happen even before the second round of the playoffs. I'm fine with that. But to do it now is stupid. And if you look at the results, I understand you can't have everybody be a finalist for every award. I get it. But, and not to make this a pro-Michigan show, but like Michigan's kicker not being a finalist for the Groza is insane. Just flat out insane. Dylan Gabriel being an honoree for the Maxwell Award, the player of the year with Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter, is based on what exactly? The Maxwell Award is like the B-rated Heisman, right? Like, it's like the Heisman without the hype.
It's a knockoff Heisman.
Like, Cam Ward, the season he's had is far better than what Dylan Gabriel's had. There are a number of other players that could find themselves in the position to be discussed for that in two weeks. Like, it's just stupid. It's so stupid.
I've been making this point for several years now. Even if you wanted to have the show on December 10th or December 17th or whenever you decide, we have this thing called the internet. That's how every ballot is distributed now. So guess what? You could find out who the finalists were in about 6 hours and get them on a plane if you needed to. Everyone pretty much knows who they were going to be or who they should be at that point. Once your entire season and your entire body of work is complete, this these notions of, and this includes bowl season and the way the college football playoff is set up, where you're going to have everyone still trying to spend 5 or 6 days in Los Angeles for the Rose Bowl and go to Disneyland and the Beef Bowl or whatever that nonsense is. Like, and they won't move off of January 1st because you have to have a sunset. These notions of the antiquated part of college football that people think are so great, including sending in nominees for the semifinalists in mid-October after half of the season, is lunacy. You don't have to lick an envelope and send it in and have somebody hand tabulate it and then send back out another ballot. Why are you doing it this way? It doesn't make any sense. Jeremiah Smith not being a finalist for the Biletnikoff and not getting a chance to show why he should be against Michigan or potentially against Oregon again in a week's time after that. Give me one good reason why that should be. You can't. It's impossible. It drives me up the wall. And I don't know which one you think is the most egregious, but Cody Simon is playing his best football right now. And I've been saying for several weeks since the semifinalists came out, what an egregious mistake that was. And then he goes out and has 10 more tackles against Indiana and 2.5 sacks, a forced fumble, and everyone saw it and was like, oh man, he's more likely to win Big Ten Linebacker of the Year. And he's not even a semifinalist for the best linebacker. And Alabama had 2, and they can't even beat Vanderbilt.
Yeah, they can't get off the field. I don't know. I just think these awards are being done for the wrong reason. Nick Nash, San Jose State wide receivers, had an unbelievable season. Great numbers, huge statistical output. No team in the country would pick that kid over Jeremiah Smith if they had to pick a wide receiver. And I think sometimes we just try to be way too smart in this business and in this sport. Just pick a date in January and say, this is when the ballots need to be sent in. If you send it in November, your vote doesn't count. Like there's ways to do it. Like it's stupid. We don't, the sport is too self-important at times and tries to make too big of a deal out of things like, again, I think even this is going to sound insane because I don't think it's bad if Ashton Jeanty wins the Heisman Trophy because his numbers are so remarkable and he's on a potential playoff team, even though we can debate whether or not in a fair sport, Boise State would probably not be in the playoff debate because they wouldn't be able to win 6 games in the Big Ten. But
they barely survived against Wyoming last week.
Yeah, I mean they wouldn't win 6 games in a major conference. So as good as Ashton Jeanty is, like we know what's coming with the sport and this divide that's coming between the Power 4 conferences and the rest of the Group of Fives and how it's going to eventually be basically 2 leagues. It's time to just start leaning into that now. We have to stop including players like Nick Nash at San Jose State in the conversation with Jeremiah Smith. It just doesn't make sense. And the entire award process, the entire award, the factors that people go into it's just irrelevant because nobody in college football would take Nick Nash over Jeremiah Smith. And the fact that voters are saying, well, Jeremiah Smith only has 54 catches and Nick Nash has 96. Like, who gives a flying how many catches Nick Nash has for San Jose State? Like, no offense to the Spartans. They're a fun team to watch, but like,
they're not really.
I mean, it's not the same sport, and we do ourselves a disservice when we try to make it the same sport when we all know what's coming. It's not real life anymore.
Yeah, I mean, what an unfortunate turn of events that Jeremiah Smith is surrounded by other talented players and can't just catch every single football for Ohio State because Emeka Ibuka and Carnell Tate exist. Too bad. But I bet he wins it the next 2 years, so maybe we can save it. Thing number 3. What has you most concerned for Saturday?
I mean, we've talked about it all week. I think it's just pass rush. I think Ohio State's offensive line, which has played admirable and has done a really good job this season, despite all the changes. I was talking to Bill Landis about this a little bit on Thursday or Wednesday, sorry. The Ohio State offensive line, with all the shuffling that they've been forced to face, has also had to face Oregon's defensive line, Penn State's defensive line, and now Michigan's defensive line. I think if you were to like outline the best 5 or 6 defensive lines in college football, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon, Tennessee, and Ole Miss would probably be the top 6. And Ohio State will have had to play 3 of them in the conference. And they've done a really admirable job with the first 2. I think that is the area of concern, because it doesn't take a lot for the defensive line to impact the game. It's a sack fumble. It's something like that happens early that changes momentum. We've seen it even in games that Ohio State went on to win comfortably, like the Iowa game 2 years ago. Like, you can make a play early and completely change the tenor of things for a bit. And in this game, where there's so much psychologically impacting everything that Ohio State does, if you get into a player's head early on the offensive line, like I could see a scenario where it gets away from 1 or 2 guys, and that's when things get challenging, like we saw with Denzel Burke against Oregon. Once that gets away from you on the field, it is hard to like reel yourself back in, no matter how much support you have from the guys on the team. So it's the offensive line. I mean, it's the same concern we've had since March about this team. They've certainly proven themselves to this point to be up to the task, but you got to do it again. And now you got to do it in a game that has more emotion than you felt in any game this year, in a game that Michigan will blitz more than anybody Ohio State's seen all year, 19 degrees, all of the other things. Like, it's just, that's where things, have a chance to break down. If there's a moment that things break down, that's likely where it is.
I think the Penn State game is pretty useful and informative for reminders that Ohio State is probably going to lose some snaps up front to Michigan. That's absolutely going to happen. Michigan has very good players. They're aggressive. They're going to get sacks, and they're going to create some tackles for loss. As long as you said, as long as they don't turn into sack fumbles or speed up the clock, that Will Howard is not able to make good decisions continuing forward. If it forces him to rush passes or put them into tighter spots and leads to an interception and a sack fumble, that's where it gets sideways. If you lose 5 yards on a snap, we saw it just last week. So Ohio State was able to score enough points against Penn State, but they also gave up a sack, had the weird intentional grounding. They were able to erase a 3rd and 35 with 2 back-to-back completions to Carnell Tate and made it look as easy as it possibly could. So I think the Buckeyes have done a really remarkable job, not just of bouncing back from adversity in training camp with the illness and the injury to Donovan Jackson, then a setback at Oregon, then the loss of Seth McLaughlin, plus Zen Mahalski that forced Donovan Jackson, like all these things. But even in game, not letting it rattle them, not changing the way that they call offensive plays, not saying, well, I got to abandon the rush. It's not really working the way they want. I think there was some notion that happened at times. Was it, Nebraska? They didn't run it enough. Well, it limited possessions. I think Ohio State has kept with its game plan, even when they've had some bad plays. And that's been really impressive to watch. And it has not always been perfect, but all those games are reminders that it doesn't have to be. If they win 75% of their snaps against Michigan's defensive line, then they're absolutely going to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to little things. Like you just said, if Will Howard, who has a tendency to try to extend plays and do extra stuff, if you're getting sacked and it's a 5-yard loss, take it. Don't turn it into a 13-yard loss on a intentional grounding like you saw against Indiana. Like, take the smaller losses so that the bigger ones, so you're not put in a position where you're forced to try the bigger ones. And I think as long as Ohio State doesn't shoot itself in the foot with penalties, with turnovers, that they'll win this game. So, but most of those things, the penalties, the turnovers, are a direct result of what happens in the trenches. So that's where it's going to have to be.
I think the same thing is true on special teams. It wouldn't be a Three Things Thursday if I didn't bring it up in some form or fashion. Ohio State has been really, really productive in the last few weeks. The one thing that is still lacking, and we've seen this impact other editions of the game previously. Kickoff return and bad decisions back there with the football, punt return, letting something hit the ground. Now Caleb Downs picked one off the turf and took it back for 79 yards a week ago against Indiana. Like, he's a special football player, but I think that's the one part that has to continue to be elevated. I'm not saying it's going to make or break the game, but we've seen Ohio State put itself in, as you said, shoot itself in the foot and put itself in longer drive situations or backed up inside of its 10 just on plays where right now it's easier than ever to just throw your arms out and call a fair catch. If that's what it takes, so be it. Like that, the attention to detail has to apply to those 5 to 10 snaps, because we've also seen Ohio State at its best win this game by blocking a punt or making something happen in a way that flips the field. That's got to happen in this game. It's easier to say Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau have to impact the game up front and the offensive line has to withstand Michigan's pressure. Yeah, those things are true. But I think often when we look at this matchup, you just say, well, it's okay. You win 2 out of 3, you're going to be fine. Maybe not. Michigan, if they're at the disadvantage that we think they are with their passing attack on offense, with Ohio State's ability to score points, what's the one part where they could maybe impact the game? Putting their starters on special teams and trying to make something happen, whether that's a punt block for them or sniffing out a fake punt, which we've seen from Ohio State in the past. I really think that is going to be important on Saturday, because it's another part, as you mentioned earlier in the week on one of the shows, where it's like, find a path to victory for Michigan. What does it include? Probably a big play on special teams, the ability to run the ball, and maybe creating a turnover from Will Howard with their own pass rush. Like that's it. One of those things in all 3 phases.
It's a hidden yards. I mean, it's what I'm talking about with Will Howard losing 13 instead of 5 on a sack. Michigan's offense is so one-dimensional and so methodical that if Ohio State is able to start drives at the 30 instead of the 10, just by that very metric alone, you're giving Michigan the ball. If you go 3 and out, you're giving them the ball at their 30 instead of at the 50. And if you're giving Michigan in this offense the ball at midfield, that's going to play directly into their hands. So field position in a game like this is very, very important, because Michigan's not going to drive 80, 90 yards on you. They're going to be able to drive 20 or 30 and kick a 40-yard field goal and kick even a 50-yard field goal, even no matter how cold it is. Like their kicker's got a huge leg. Mm-hmm. So it's just those plays, like you said, letting a ball bounce over your head at the 20-yard line on a punt and having to down it at the 7. Like you can't do that this week. So there are those hidden yards, I think, that is also a major concern.
All right. Well, those are 3 things. Thanksgiving 3 things. From the podcast, we sincerely appreciate. Berm said it at the start of the show. I'll say it at the end as a reminder. We could not do this without you all who support us, watch us, interact with us. Even those of you who don't agree with everything we say, still appreciate you swinging by and hearing us out from time to time. We're grateful for it, and we hope everyone who can hear our voices has a happy Thanksgiving with their friends and family. You got 2 more days to go until the game. We're counting them down. We'll have Freaky Friday and some bold predictions coming your way. We've still got Buckeye Q. Still got content out there. If you need something, if you're getting ready for an afternoon nap after the feast, hey, just flip it on YouTube or wherever you get us on your audio platforms. We appreciate you all. You're almost there. For Berm, I am Austin. Happy Thanksgiving from the Podcast Daily. See ya.